It's that time. Once again, GM Facepalm episode coming at you today. We're going to talk about Iron Gods, the very first book, Fires of Creation. Something I've wanted to talk about for quite a while. Anticipation leading up to this, upon hearing of its announcement so long ago. And even going further back than that, looking at the Inner Sea World Guide, the campaign setting source book, flipping through that, looking at the different sort of pockets of interest within Galarian, coming to that page of Numeria with super science and super savageness, seeing the fusion of fantasy and science. Some people would say probably chocolate fantasy mixed with peanut butter sci-fi. So seeing that fusion there, immediate disappointment trying to search for modules, adventure paths, any other sort of lore, any information to read about, to plan out, or maybe your own campaign. Not knowing about the Gearsmen, not knowing about the Technic League, or the technological weapons, items. So, met with similar disappointment. But now, finally, we have the technology guide, we got People of the Stars, Iron Gods Adventure Path, and for a lot of people this is going to turn them away from it, for those that just want strict fantasy. But for those of you still staying tuned to this, you definitely like a fusion of science fiction and fantasy. So here we go. We'll continue with this. Iron Gods. Go from first all the way to fourth. That seems to be the general outline of it, and it's evident here. Looking it over, we finally get that needed information. What is the Silvermount? What created it? What caused it? What was the sky metal that fell from the sky? All of those events leading to that significant crash upon Galarian. We finally get information on that now. And going forward with that, with Book 2, you'll find out more information, more depth, illustrious depth with the Technic League, and how best to use that knowledge in your for other games. So this campaign, this AP, with People of Stars, I think you could have a great spotlight with the Kasatha, or the Android, or the Lashunto thing, or Triaxion. So you could have a great spotlight with those, since some of those creatures would undoubtedly be traversing this barren wasteland, this riddled with technological wonders. Even having one that is descended from a long line that maybe came from that crash ship, or a crash ship. Some sort of technological wreckage. Now that we know is, spoiler alert, 9,000 years old. And if you don't want to do some sort of descendants, you could even go with something where they emerge from a capsule, as though waking up from stasis. So a lot of these things, immediate movies come to mind. When you think about the ship that crashed, I think of Pandorum, of waking up from stasis and not knowing what's going on, coming aware in the midst of destruction, of chaos, of violence. Pandorum comes to mind. Science fiction movie. Maybe the events, the horrors that transpired on that ship during its voyage through space. The movie Event Horizon comes to mind. Now, reaching down to the surface, the barren wasteland, the scattered sky metals, the ruins of those that crashed. a lot of narration comes to the forefront. You know, things such as Robert E. Howard or Edgar Rice Burroughs, even John Carter. You know, the Barsoom series books. There, I mean, the great fusion of two different worlds coming together. There's a lot to be had with Iron Gods, and I think you'll have equally measured challenges with that in the face of its technological items, weapons, whether they're chems, whether it's hazards with the environ, the weapons like the guns, the chainsaws, maybe such things as access cards, color coordinated objects, devices, maybe tools, generators, transmitters, all that kind of weird stuff. But as far as the first book anyway, it's not heavily impacted. There's sort of a spreading out of different small things, so you're not hit with it really hard. And this takes place in this town called Torch. And when I read about Torch, I immediately thought of that science fiction show on the Sci-Fi Channel, Defiance. Sort of a mosh posh of different mixes kind of thrown in there, all under the sort of pressure or heel of a faction such as the Technic League. Some savagery, some barren wastes, environ hazards. So a lot of that comes to mind. Torch is quite interesting. They give you a lot of great information on that. A fire in the sky, a column of light that pierces the shroud of darkness of the cloud coverage. This fire that ever burns within Torch. Some sort of wonder, a ruin, and a town that forms around it, and the fascination that draws travelers from afar, upon learning that you can forge sky metals with this fire. So, moving onward from that, I don't really see anything in the book that really strikes me as a scenario for a total party killer. I think the players should be deeply enrooted within Torch as they begin. There's some great rumors for Torch. And soon enough you find yourselves adventuring, sort of an investigation, looking for missing people or why the fires went out all of a sudden, the pressures of the Technic League as they heavily tax this town. And with the Technic League in mind, you might wonder, well, why aren't these technological wonders everywhere, scattered about? Why in just this one remote region? Well, the Technic League hoards all these items, stops technological items from leaving the area, scours the area for any of them, desperately researching and searching for new sites, finding out that these are 9,000 years old. And you can look up most of the technology on the, or actually all of it on the SRD, and you can kind of get a sense for what everything is. And you'll find little parts or little pieces of these items, whether they're weapons or resources. You'll see that they kind of slowly get introduced. Gunslingers would probably be a viable option, something with a sword and pistol type. Barbaric, those are against the Technic League or against technological items, wonders. Characters like that would be good. Some people have a conflict though, as far as maybe they want to be a representative of the Technic League, but you know they're heavily opposed, a great face of opposition. So there may be some stress there amid the group, amid the party, being a member of the Technic League. Maybe one that should be shadowed, of its membership not known to the party. Maybe one whose story started out where they were in the pursuit of knowledge, of science, and then learned of the darker deeds of the Technic League, of their horrible experimentation, learning the horrors of what they do, and being stuck in this situation. Or maybe they fled from the Technic League and are sort of in hiding, as they are somewhat of a fugitive of that faction. So, and you'll find some representations of that as well with other people's stories, one in particular, whether you were to find that out or not. But there's a lot of stuff to work with as a GM. You have this sort of newfound technological wonder site that's been discovered near town, and you can make forays into this area and come back, rest, sell off your items and stuff. So there's no real rush. You know, there is this sort of whole, oh, we gotta figure out what's going on, what's happening, but you can kind of pace it to where your players, if they need to, they can, you know, retreat, regroup, re-strategize what they're going to do if they met some heavy opposition. So there is that. A lot of it feels kind of like Fallout in a way, as far as the things that you'll find, the things that you'll face, this sort of barren waste in a way, this fear of environmental dangers, whether it be radiation or in certain cases spores or other things. Don't drink the spaceship juice, otherwise known as the Numerian fluid. So there's lots of things in there like that. I even go over this new material called glossite, which is otherwise known as Numerian steel, as you soon discover that this sort of ruin, this exploration of this underground area starts to give way to the hulls of a ship, as you find out it's a spaceship, where you find these decks, these labs, these rooms, given access cards, and trying to bypass some of the technology, trying to interpret it, understand it, whether through linguistics, trying to gain access to certain rooms. You even have like a little thing in here where you push certain buttons, and there's like actually like a little table in the very front of the book that tells you what happens when you push too many buttons, or just the random chances when characters are kind of interested by the pretty lights, or see a projection screen or some kind of monitor with all these strange symbols, and you might have the curious types that just like to push something just at the weirdest of times. So that might prove to be a interesting moment. And they actually explain some of those things as far as what could happen. Some dialogue, some background events that just kind of give a little bit of flair of a narrative theme to it. And there's a great fusion of science and fantasy in this. For those that are Kasatha, you'll be pleased to find a few other Kasatha. Maybe learn of that origin, which is kind of enshrouded within that race. And it's great that we found, as a GM, you finally get to find out this information, and even more exciting is you can impart some of that knowledge to them over time. As they come across technological terrors. The maps were done very, very well. I really like it. Even this sort of ideal of something waking up from stasis. Maybe even the people that were those that came from the ship. They're described as human. Their statistics should be the same. So, whether they're going to be Androffan, if that's the pronunciation for it, but you can represent that as a human. They just came from another planet. Maybe they have amnesia, kind of like that Pandorum effect. Whether they woke up from stasis, or rather they are descendants throughout the ages. And I think one of the campaign books talks about that, certain ones that are still alive or in hiding. But you start to learn about the color codes for the technology, finding out that some items may be time-worn, where they may not function properly. Some only have a specific amount of charges, so you need some sort of battery, the silver disc, to actually power those. The ones that still hold power, versus just the other ones that they just use as a form of currency, which a lot of that makes me think again of Fallout with the bottle caps. And there's a lot of great NPCs here. You find out some of their natures, some of their hidden ambitions. You can even go back to town, and there's some great investigation there. There's some places where you can just kind of blow off steam, whether you want to engage with more dialogue, more background events, instead of, you know, putting the main story at the forefront and pressuring them. What I really like about this, what I should probably suggest to you, is I hate it when there's a group and they feel that they have to have a cleric. They feel like they have to have a healer, when you can have wands, potions, another class that may dabble in the healing skill. I mean, everybody thinks you have to have a cleric instead of, you know, an oracle, or maybe a white mage, or alchemist, or, you know, you don't have to have a cleric. But for those that are worried, maybe if the GM, that mindset creeps in. I really like the android antagonists that they introduce towards the end of the book, which, you know, consequently they always have their own section around page 50 to 55, and, you know, a great backstory. And I'm going to impose the same GM tool as was in Wrath of the Righteous. This tool of redemption, whether it's those that are allied with the group or against the group, whether they're good or bad, there is some redeeming quality. Maybe just dropping that in, subconsciously however, or very discreetly, dropping that in to bring incidental pause to the group, to make them think, maybe having some of that backstory come out. And I really like the android in this book, Meanda, if I'm saying that right. The backstory is really great with her, as far as coming out of a capsule chamber, awakening amid the chaos and destruction around, of the fires of the ship that crashed or something, knowing just violence and not knowing compassion, generosity. So maybe the group could have some redemption values to those that they encounter, in the same similar fashion that you would have seen in the Wrath of the Righteous. So I may try to introduce that, or with other characters that spawn later on. But what's nice about her is that she's a cleric, so if you need some kind of NPC or some sort of healing aspect to it, there you go. They really get into some of the nanites, the technology behind that, which I think is very good. You got all the resources from the campaign setting book, the Numeria book, which goes quite well with this. You got the technology guide that goes well with this, which I think you have to have unless you just want to rely on the SRD. But I think that would be a good thing to have, especially when interpreting the Iron God treasures in here. I would also suggest considering a Gearsmen PC race. You can check out my video for that. I think I kind of went through like a 3-part series there as I developed that playable race, and you'll definitely come across them. One consideration, one note to make here is to fully understand hardness, since some of the robots, or I think all of them will have that. Something that you would find with inanimate objects, and do not make the mistake of treating it just as damage reduction. So keep that in mind. There is some research you'll have to do with understanding the technology, so just keep that in mind. So the technology guide would probably be best for that, rather than just relying on the SRD. But there's a Torch Gazetteer, which is really nice. Talks about the citizens and stuff, as such as you would find with most. But they have the ecology of the android, and then you have the people of the stars to kind of flesh out your android if you choose to be one. They list the feats and the names and the variants. I thought the undead one is quite interesting. Even read the little story that they have in here, the Pathfinder journal, and I liked that. It was quite nice. And the bestiary is good. I didn't find anything wrong with that. I think finding the different types of robots will prove fun. And I think that's really all I have on that. I'll be running this in a few short weeks here. I just started prepping it and getting everything read up, so I will be ready for it. What's interesting about this Iron Gods release is that you also have the advanced class guide to play with, whether you choose to allow that or not. I think that's a great utility that the players can use. And I'm really looking forward to the next book, Part 2, Book 2, which should be out towards the end of the month here. If you'll notice, the chainsaw makes a very nice appearance here, and it'll be on the cover of Book 3. So I'm very interested by that, mainly from a Resident Evil 4 standpoint. But yeah, I'll go more into this in depth as I run it, and maybe offer other videos as I get to it, but this will be a 1.5 to 2 year endeavor with my group, using map tools and Vent, so I hope I can keep it going, keep everything fresh, exciting, enriching. So yeah, feel free to comment, suggest, whatever. Also, don't forget about the Paizo forums. They have a lot of great information on there already, you know, especially the GM reference as far as noticing any mistakes made in the AP, any sort of numbers that don't look right, or something that may have been left out, or just the author or contributing authors to it, designers who may have some other information that got left out of the book. I found quite a few bits of those, not with Iron Gods yet, but you know, with other APs such as Jade Regent and Shattered Star. Looking those things over, seeing what sort of bonus content didn't make it in the book because, you know, can't compile too much in there when it's already bloated. So stay tuned as I kind of make sort of an update as I get to the other books and rondos. I'll try to give you continuing campaign coverage as I go along. But it's been a long time coming. It's finally here, and I'm excited to jump right into it with reckless abandon. And I think this will kind of be the apex of my GMing. So that's all I got for now. Until next time. See ya.